public budget meeting for 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, good morning, councillors. Any members of the public that brave the weather. So, as the Chief Administrative Officer for the County of Stettler, I'm proud to introduce the proposed budget for 2024 to 2027, inviting public feedback and council review. This proposal includes a detailed 4-year operating budget and strategic 6-year capital plan. Our ongoing challenge lies in sustaining our current service levels amidst significant inflation and dwindling revenue streams, while responsibly managing our capital assets to ensure the county's long-term viability. There's significant interest in the Alberta government's revision of the local government fiscal framework, the LGFF, to replace the Municipal Sustainability Initiative funding in 2024. We are hopeful that this new formula will continue to support our distinct needs in rural Alberta. In recent years, traditional revenue sources have become less reliable, particularly in the oil and gas sector, where taxation revenues have not rebounded to previous levels. Our county has been proactive in pursuing receivables from its industry. Notably, the Alberta government's 35 assessment relief for shallow gas wells, introduced in 2019, has been extended until the assessment model review is complete and the regulated assessment models for wells are updated. The property tax exemption for new wells and pipelines established in 2020 will end after the 2024 municipal tax year. Given the challenges of rapid inflation and decreased funding, our budget strategy has shifted towards maintenance. We aim to leverage grant funding to effectively sustain and develop our communities and to prepare to maximize opportunities presented by other government levels. We are also focusing on future planning, setting aside funds for capital purchases and projects. Our workforce, deeply integrated into our community, is our strength. We invested in development, cross-training, and education to maintain a versatile and skilled team ready to adapt to the changing municipal needs. With the revival of the oil and gas industry, our workforce strategy adapts, preparing for project-specific roles and maximizing grant-funded projects. Looking forward, our priorities include enhancing road infrastructure and maintenance, expanding rural water lines to ensure clean, potable water for residents struggling to maintain homes and operations, strengthening bylaw enforcement for community safety, supporting the agricultural sector with improved weed and pest control, and continuing our equipment lending program. So that's about it in a nutshell, but I'm going to let our Director of Finance now take it, and she's the one that's done all the hard work on it, so thank you.
Thank you, CAO Casty.
Thank you, Yvette.
Just a reminder, I did hear somebody's phone beep, so just make sure your phones are on silent, please. Just so we're not interrupted with that through the meeting. Thank you. And Krista?
Perfect. So I've got 3 different documents, so I'm just trying to keep track of everything on the right page. So what I'm presenting to you today is the budget for 2024 to 2027. We are presenting a 2024 budget that is a balanced budget. We have a surplus of $7,307. The operating budget for 2024 is $29,842,000, and the capital budget is $5,740,000. I'm just going to go and follow along based on, if you're looking at the document, I'm going to jump right to the numbers. I believe it's above page 12. Just keep going. So I'm going to start with the income and expenses. This might, oh, there we go. The income and expenses. So what we've proposed in the budget for 2024 is a 3% increase to residential, non-residential, and M&E, and a 5% tax increase to farmland. This brings us an additional revenue source of $445,000. And overall, when you do look at our general operations revenue and expenses for 2024, it's about a 2.7% increase from 2023. Does anybody have any questions on that before I get into the breakdown of departments? Okay. I'm going to roll right into council. So council is an increase over 2023 of approximately 6% the budget, but a lot of that breakdown is an increase due to increased conferences, FCM being one of them, as well as reflective of actual costs due to inflation. We had some significant inflation and cost increases that we've recognized in the last couple of years. And you're going to hear me say increased costs due to inflation in just about all departments. You're going to see that. Overall, there isn't any significant changes, though, to council, and I'm just going to roll right into administration. Administration sees a 3.4% increase from 2023 to 2024. And some of the things that I'll highlight here is this budget is planned for following key strategic initiatives, projects, and capital investments, as well as long-term saving goals. Our staff levels plan to remain constant with a continued emphasis on supporting other departments, as we have done in the past. For council, administration, and municipal services, it accounts for about 12% of the overall budget, which is in line with what it's been in past years. One of the major things that will be happening in administration is that we've identified is following key projects and capital projects, such as making sure our technology, including our servers are up to date. And that's one of the items we flagged for future development and ensuring we're putting money away in reserves for those costs. Does anybody have questions up to this point? Okay, so we're going to roll into fire next. And if you're following the words, we don't have the words necessarily. We've hit them in a bit of a different order. So I'm just going to have to jump around between my screens a little bit. So 2023 to 2024 did see a significant change in the fire. January 2nd of 2024, we implemented a new regional chief. So the regional chief for the town and county has been put into place and has started work. One of the items that we flagged when we were doing the budget is that we're going to see some significant changes in the County of Stettler budget for fire, because we're not only we'll be hiring an additional County of Stettler chief, and we'll be working with the regional chief to get that person into place. Once we have all of our chiefs into place, we will be looking at our capital, our replacement plans, and determining the best course of action to ensure we're having fire coverage appropriate throughout the County of Stettler. This also includes investigating firefighting capabilities in Erskine South Shore region of Buffalo Lake. One of the capital items that we have flagged for 2024 is a tender replacement, and that tender replacement will be taking place in Big Valley.
That's for cost of, what's the budgeted cost for that?
The budget cost we've anticipated at this point is $500,000.
And just could I, just when it does come to the new municipal fire manager between the two pieces, I just want to make it clear that we were paying for a full position before.
Correct.
So now we'll basically be paying for a position and a half, and we were paying for a vehicle before, and we'll be paying for 1.5 vehicles now. So it's not like we brought on a full position. It's like we've increased it by half.
And one of the things that we did identify is we didn't want to proceed with, we kept the amount with the replacement tender at being $500,000. We have flagged that that cost could be a different one, but we do have reserves. And so some of the reserves that we've built up in the past couple of years with the fire department, we'll be using to cover off these additional costs that we anticipate in 2024.
Does this also include the two brat units in here too?
Those reserves are built, so they'll be coming out of reserves.
Okay. That's our rapid.
Tax, one for Buy More, one for Denell.
Now, the fire department makes up 5% of the overall budget for the County of Stettler as well, and I just wanted to mention that. Does anybody else have further questions on fire?
Just quickly, how much did the budget increase by % year to over year?
So on the fire department, we've actually found that that one was a tough one. I had it at, there, I believe it was at 10%. However, that one I felt was a bit of an anomaly because we noticed that there was going to be some reserves in and out. And I think the true number of where we've got the change we'll see is when we do the revised budget in May.
Well, I'm looking at the numbers, and numbers look like budget went down.
It does, but that's because what you don't see in 2023 against that is the reserve transfer to cover off the purchase of the radio system in 23. And that was a significant cost.
So that'll drop the 23 budget.
What it does is we don't show necessarily the transfers in and out on this. And so when I factor that one in, it does make a difference. Any further? Yes, Dave.
The replacement stuff that we had to put in 100,000 to get our stations up to par. It's a one-time thing, and well, my question is, did it come out of reserves?
Came out of the grant.
Yeah,
Last year, we got an increase in our MSI operating grant, and I left half of it to cover our, commitments to libraries and our county recreation funds. And I took the other half and I placed it into fire because I knew we were going to have some
We knew you
significant
were going to
costs.
have a problem.
So that was about 250,000, and I've asked Krista to do the same this year because we still have more bunker gear, like all our bunker gear, like it was all expired, all needed to be replaced. We now have the air mask and compressor stations. I think every one of our fire halls now has pressure washers so they can properly clean their equipment, lockers. We have regular maintenance people in place. So I knew that the operating costs weren't going to go down, but I wanted to capitalize on the extra grant funding to help us get the departments up and going.
And the MSI grant's going to be the same next year, they're just coming in.
For 2024 it is, it's been confirmed, we never know.
You never know from year to year.
Yes, but we're hoping.
We're in it now, and it's been confirmed that it's the same as last year, right?
Right. I think that if we, once we get our bunker gear and everything up to date and current, we know how long it's going to last, and we can start budgeting to put away so much a year to replace it so it won't be such a big, poof, 100 grand.
Your thing, and then you
Yeah.
replace it, all right? So
Yeah.
it hasn't been replaced over the years.
No.
Okay, thank you.
is there any additional questions on fire? So now roll into emergency management and protective services. Emergency management, protective services increase from last year to this year was basically status quo. We didn't see a big overall increase or anything. The policing and emergency management does make up about 6% of our total budget for 2024.
Just one comment on that is, I guess, just so the public knows, we are reviewing our partners' expenses on all this continually, because as you look at that one pie graph, we showed 11% of our revenue comes from user fees. And that's something we have to focus on go forward to ensure that we're being covered completely for the cost that we're putting into it, and we're just paying the county of Stellar cost.
Yeah, and Krista will be able to reflect that in the budget we bring back when we set the tax rate. Because we're just currently now, I think she's closing off 2023 next Friday. So then we'll have all our expenses in, and then the bills will be generated for our partners. But we're what, 25%?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of the total cost for emergency management. The rest are partners.
And also with those user fees, it's not just emergency management that's a factor in that. You have other user fees such as water, utilities.
Well, it's a big bucket, but it's just, it is included in that.
Yeah.
And that's it, when they hear us talk user fees, when the public hears us, it's to try and recover what it's costing us to do these extra things.
Protective Services is committed to enhancing the safety and well-being of the County of Stettler through strategic initiatives and investments. They plan on focusing on patrolling areas with heightened break and enter rates. They will be resuming the Coffee with Cop sessions in collaboration with the Stettler RCMP. They're also planning to intensify commercial vehicle enforcement and host regional commercial vehicle checks. And one of the key projects and major goals that our Protective Services has is to get a traffic monitoring trailer. That's the speed trailer. And what they'll be doing with that is playing a crucial role in curbing speeding in rural areas, hamlets, and around the lake. So that is part of the capital that they have proposed. As well as another capital that they've proposed is a replacement of one of their units. Protective Services plans every year for a reserve transfer. So those are covered off by reserves to purchase the trail or the vehicle. The trailer is just an additional expense this year. They're also aiming to do a regional full-scale emergency response exercise. This will involve multiple municipalities, including outside of this area. And further to it, they're working on grant funding to get an emergency portable office trailer. Is there any questions on Protective Services emergency management?
What percent of our budget goes to that?
6% of our budget goes to emergency management Protective Services.
Which I guess another part of that we have to look at is the fact that we've increased the number of officers. Basically, since I've been in councils, it's doubled. And, with more strategic focus and more demands handed down that's required. So as that budget's right now.
Also, I think we will have 3 officers all will have finished their training. I guess the term is crawl trucks. So when we pull over vehicles that are suspicious, we can take them out of service if we have to.
Is the RCMP our contribution within this Protective Services?
Yes, it is.
Police funding piece? Okay.
And this is the last year that they are increasing, or do we have another increase?
No, it should plateau. We're at the top, I think. It's almost
Or we're in final year?
500,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just flipping to that right now. It's
What is it? So that is that 553.
So it, based on what I can see here, 2023 and 2024, 24 was the last year it should increase. And so now it should remain stable according to all the information we've received.
That's what, 470?
436.
Thank you.
We still hold steadfast, is that the right term? For the deal that we made with Minister Madhu, that if we couldn't collect it, we didn't remit it. And so we do not remit the funds that we cannot collect. I don't know how much longer we're going to get away with that, but so far we're doing it.
I just want to clarify, so you're saying on this budget that we're looking at, there is the 570 or 470,000 that we transfer out to the government?
Correct.
So our $1.2 million budget, and half of it is our own?
So.
Probably about 60% of it is our own.
Our own, yeah.
Okay. So where do we see the transfer out?
Under general services. General services, pardon me. Yeah.
Is that the total or is there other pieces in that category?
There's other stuff in there.
Other stuff in there too?
Yeah.
Have we heard from the province whether they are going to be filling the local sheriff position, since that retirement's going to be taking place right away? Or is this just an added stressor to this budget line?
Yeah, we haven't heard anything, but I am going to try and contact K Division this afternoon to see if they are still wanting to come and meet with us. But they have the conference towards the end of the month, so that might be an opportunity also for us to get a hold of them.
Yeah, for the general public, that a lot of the sheriff's duties have been downloaded onto the county. And that's why that budget isn't a little more.
Well,
And when he retires, then it'll be more.
well, it depends who they replace him with and, but I don't think ours would be anymore. If the remittance of the government plateaus out, then we'd just be looking at inflationary increase, to staff and to equipment. The rest should stay pretty steady, hopefully.
I guess the only thing being though is that sheriff position is basically transfer, what did we call them before? They were
EOTs.
DOTs. And if that DOTs pull out of our area, that's with the amount of trucks we have going through here. We have 3 that can check, but I mean, we'll have to monitor that too and see what type of truck traffic and how our truck traffic looks going through our area.
Just to put that in perspective, it wasn't that many years ago that we actually had a district office here, and I think we had 5 officers out of the provincial building at that time. So, and that's within the last 12 years that we have went down to 1, and now that individual will be.
And then there were none.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty close that most of the, they set them up and they pull the trucks over to go through them. They don't do them without our guys there. They just don't have the manpower. So every time the government wants to do one of these exercises, we're involved in it.
Is there further questions on protective services?
I think you're safe.
Sweet. We're going to move into operations or transportation, whichever one you want to call it. This is the biggest percentage of the budget. From 2023 to 2024, we saw a 10% increase, but we'll go into some of the explanation as to why we've got an increase there. But operations in 2024 makes up 51% of the budget. The aim is to not only retain and build strong teams within the larger operational department, but a key part of the strategy involves elevating the level and standards of tasks and certification within operations. We're going to continue to bolster operational efficiency and allowing them to work across departments and help out with areas that may need additional help in different times of the year. Another priority for operations is to improve response times when assisting ratepayers and foster increased participation in agricultural service events and workshops. Some of the key projects that we're going to see in 2024 include the completion of Carlisle Estates pavement and Botha and Gadsby infrastructure repairs and replacements. Botha and Gadsby, we've had, when they dissolved into hamlets, into the county of Stettler, we're just finishing the work up in those communities, and our goal is to have all of that completed in 2024. Another thing that we're going to see in 2024 is the gravel program targets crushing and spreading an estimated 300 miles. We also have anticipated crushing a significant amount of gravel this year for the demands that we have placed on our gravel program. Some other significant projects include the contract completion of stairs for public access at Buffalo View Estates Marina, installation of parks in Erskine and yet to be determined location, Belkey Pond rejuvenation and development, continued brushing projects. We've worked on some bridge grant applications, and if those all go through, we are going to be extremely busy with bridges as well. And then there'll be the Collins Pit gravel application and crushing. Public Works will also be working, and Agricultural Services on working towards gravel pit reclamations. The capital purchases for 2024. So we had we approved in 2023 the purchase of 5 graders, and they were from 23 to 2025. The 2023 graders never arrived. We anticipate them in the first quarter of 2024. So those are a carry forward. So we have 2 140s and 2 160 graders that we'll be receiving in 2024. And in 2025, we'll be receiving a 14M. We also have 4 replacement pickup trucks, a plow sander unit, and a used water truck are all in the capital replacements. We've also earmarked $150,000 to go into a reserve for a future gravel and pump truck. So we have that money set aside.
Can I ask a question on the expense side? We're talking 300 miles of gravel, or was that 300 miles or kilometers?
300 miles.
What did we do this year?
125, I think.
Yep.
Yeah,
How much?
125.
125, so that is a real increase on what we saw last year, which was part of how we were dealing with our graveling in our roads, so.
And that reflects our operations checking out, because I mean, we had a dry year, right? I mean, and typically that's where wet weather eats gravel, and we had a dry year. So I think that
And it
bodes
is
well
very-
for how operations is running.
It's very cyclical with the gravel. We tend to have every 4 to 6 years, we do have 1 or 2 years where we have significant more gravel that we put on because it's that time of that rotation. So we're back at that higher demand rotation as well.
I don't need a dollar figure because we haven't probably put it out for crushing, but the Collins, how much are we going to crush out of the Collins pit? How many yards or tons? You know, I know roughly what it costs to crush it. I just wanted to know how many tons we're gonna put in a pile down there.
We're going to put a significant amount in because we're going to open it up, so we want to make it worthwhile.
Worthwhile to get a crusher. That's where I was going with that. Yeah.
So that's our plan.
My estimate would be about 75,000 tons.
75, so
And with, I guess with that Collins pit though too, that is, we've secured a very large amount of gravel for future generations, right in the heart of where our gravel pits are in the Big Valley area. Or the Fen, I guess basically the Fen area, and so we still have to start into these pits, but that was through the past budget years, we did end up with those properties.
I'm actually kind of excited because the testing all came back so good on that pit that
with all the gravel that we got for over 100 years supply, what we put it on.
I think officially we've been estimated, by engineering companies between 45 and 60, but probably the way that's a, continuous amount of so much a year. The way the guys monitor the roads, if we need gravel, they get them. If they don't, they don't. So,
Sure.
we could probably stretch it out to close to that.
We have been doing it, so that was what it would be.
We're also looking at building the road that isn't developed right now. We've been working, trying to get the wetlands to go around the wetlands that's in the road. It's pretty dry right now. But that would connect the Stormont pit and the Collins pit. So it'd make moving gravel back and forth between the two areas really slick, really quick and really slick.
Thanks.
And if water creates us to have to gravel more, hopefully we do have to do our full 300 miles next year.
I'm hoping 5 now.
Because we need it.
Yeah.
But that's just a good management on Joe's part. There's no sense of putting them rocks on the road when the road is as hard as a pavement and then they all bounce off and then then it gets wet, we have to do them again. That's good, Joe.
I think, we were able to use some of that surplus gravel in the ASD pit, and I use the term lightly. I think we were able to bring some gravel in from the Bridges pit and able to mix, and the product ended up being really good. I've drove a lot of those roads down there. They're in excellent shape.
And I was very glad to see it was going to ASD pit.
Yeah, it's
I go and checked on it. It's pretty good gravel.
also we found kind of almost like bubbles in the stockpile where some of the gravel that we had bought earlier on 10, 12 years ago from Handhills, we found kind of little, so they were able to mix it up and get it on, and actually the roads are in pretty good shape.
Just a question on that too, like this fall, like in winter prior to Christmas when we had the condition the roads were in. I didn't drive all the areas, but my areas, I did really like how the corners were done and worked, and they'd worked a lot of washboard out, and then we didn't have many complaints at all about ice at intersections because of how that was done. What kind of an expense was that, Joe? Just like, not nailing you right to the wall, but I mean, it's part of your operating because graders are out working, but in the same sense, roughly what?
Did it significantly increase our operating costs?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, we didn't see any massive significant increases in our operating costs. I think that what Dan was really looking at trying to achieve this year was we spent quite a considerable amount of time training, doing toolbox talks, discussing with the staff what they should be doing when they're going round, and the staff really took it up to heart this year. So I think that just through the training that we did, and we spent a lot of money this year on training, last year on training as well, and that new blading method is really kind of starting to come to fruition now as well. And I think that it's definitely take on board the praise that we're getting, but it's been good management for the last couple of years that the guys have really been working through. And it's now we're starting to see the benefits of that hard work for the last couple of good years worth of good management. From before I was here, right up now, and the guys are really taking it to heart, doing really well with it. So not massive, significant increases. We haven't seen any huge operational increases of our own gravel stuff. Certainly this year moving forward, we are changing the structure within operations. So we're going to have Randy Grams is stepping into the role specifically to deal with gravel. And we've actually just set up a new trucking lead person as well that's looking at that. So Randy Grams is stepping down from a management position into a supervisory position to deal with the gravel, specifically just to do that. We've increased our staffing levels last year by 3 full-time staff members. We've got them out, we're testing them, they're doing really well just now. Class 3, Class 1 drivers, and we're prepping them up and training them so that they can hit the ground running when the gravel starts. So we're really bolstering that department, and we're filling a lot of the vacant positions that we've had sitting there. So we're finding that that's going to be helping us moving into 2024 really quickly. So.
The training of class ones, can we do that internally? To a point, or can we make much saving there?
Maybe not necessarily massive savings. We've been talking to a couple of training providers to try and get Class 1 drivers trained. We do in-house training with them, but not the qualification itself. So like our Class 3 drivers, we've got a couple of people just now going through Class 3, and we'll actually take them out with guys like Cody and Dan, and they'll kind of monitor them and then put them forward for their qualifications. So it's a kind of two-phase thing, but we are saving some money with it, but I wouldn't say it's a significant saving.
Do they still have to go through a course where it's mandatory?
Yeah.
Mr. Gender, I think part of that too is you can take the course, but I wouldn't necessarily say that you're a trained driver. And the experience has to go with it. That's, I think, part of it. You get your course, and then we'll train you how to actually drive.
I think the difference is certification versus competency.
Right on, yeah.
Yeah, and Joe, you'll consider these guys that have had a class 3 with the queue for 3 years, they're what they are is young farm boys. They're girls, it doesn't really matter. Will we help them get their class 1 financially?
Yeah, if we're going through that, I think the costs for it
Put
are
that
right.
out there because you've had a couple with class 3 that would love to have their class 1, and they own land here and stuff. You might end up with them for forever and ever, oh man.
I think the cost for the Class 1 is around $10,000.
At 10, is it still at 10? I heard there was a cheaper one, no?
Possibly. I know that Dusty and Dan were looking at
Might have to look at it.
I mean, what we're looking to try and do just now is get guys with experience as well. But the guys that have their Class 3 that are looking to try and upgrade and get into it, yeah, we're always looking to try and promote from within.
And we would take it off their wages so they could afford to do that, working it, we hired him as a class 3?
No, we would take that on board ourselves as training.
Yeah, we sponsor that.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. I think that should go out to the public, as some of them don't think that they really can't afford to take the time off of another job to go and do it unless they know they're gonna have a job, haul gravel, but they like that hauling gravel on, with class 1 license and a young guy, 35 years old, why would we turn him away? Okay, thank you.
Councilor Stevens?
The grader training, I know we did some of that the last 2 years. Is that winding down or are we bringing that individual back?
Again this year, yeah.
We'll be the team this year.
That's been a hugely successful program.
No, I just wanted to know how far we've made it through the ranks. So
I think we're six.
One of the other things that we, I don't want to promise it right now, but one of the things that we're looking at doing is we have the potential for 80% of our costs for training could possibly be absorbed through a third party just now. So we're looking into that. Cara and I were looking in that towards the end of the last year. So we might have some grant applications that we can get training funded through. So if we can get that and it's up to 80%, that's going to massively increase what we're doing for training, which would be fantastic for us. We would be able to really kind of kick that up a wee bit.
I've witnessed in areas how much of a difference it does make, so.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's like night and day. I think the message is that the County of Stettler supports their employees. You work hard for us, we'll work hard for you. And we've trained mechanics, grader operators, truck drivers, and we foot the bill and that will continue.
Yeah, just to echo what CEO Cassidy saying, we've got David Weeb is one of our newest employees. He's been here for just over 6-7 months now. He is in his 4th year of his heavy duty mechanic. He's a local kid. He's in town, house in town. He's on the fire department, and we're currently sending him away to complete his 4th year in heavy duty mechanics. He's there now for the next 2 months, fully paid, and he's also been paid his wage while she's away, and we're paying for his qualification as well. And he's been an absolute fantastic addition to the staff. Ivan and I were discussing yesterday with CAO Cassidy the opportunity to actually put him through the emergency vehicle inspections that we discussed last year. Ivan's got a couple of great contacts with that as well, so we're going to look to try and get that brought in-house as well. So all these things that we're looking at are now starting to come to fruition, which is absolutely fantastic.
And any of that we can do in-house is such a huge savings, not just in the inspection itself, but the driving, delivering of vehicles, dropping them off, the downtime, everything else. So that's great.
Is there any other further questions on operations? I'm going to roll into the next part is airport. Normally, we just skip over this, but considering there was a significant increase, I just wanted to flag that. So this is a repayment, or this is a payment in 2024 for a joint project with the town of Stettler out at the airport that we are required to fund. We are taking it out of reserves, and we will be replenishing those reserves over the next 5 years.
Can you tell me what percentage of increase that is?
I may plan that number too. You're welcome.
So as that reserve transfer is done, Krista, that doesn't affect budget line items because we're taking it in one hit for 2024.
Right, and so then you'll see it on the cash flow as a transfer back to reserve that we'll commit to for the next 4-5 years.
And if that comes in, we've estimated at 250, and if it comes in less, then we just don't transfer as much in it.
Correct.
Being on our airport board, maybe, do you want to explain what that cost is for?
So they're redoing, we got a grant from the provincial government to, and I think it's 80, is it 80?
75-25.
75-25. So 75% grant from the provincial government to redo the airstrip. Roughly, we're looking at that $1 million cost for it, or a little bit, 1.2, I think. So
And that also allows bigger planes to come in, doesn't it?
not as much as that, it's just the fact that it's the airstrip's going to stay the same length. We're not making it any wider. It's just making it. Right now, you can bring in actually. I mean, back when the provincial government had their small, and I can't remember what jet it was, it could land there. So it's capable of doing that currently. Basically, it's a 50-year-old airstrip that needs to be redone.
For medevac and everything
Yeah,
else.
and absolutely.
And our lighting systems.
Yes, and this also pays for the 5-year recertification of the
Yeah.
GIS lights for,
Landed in inclement weather and at night.
and it's for basically for the medevacs and stars, if we had to bring the big stars.
Counselor Jenner, you're saying it was $1 million project,
1.2.
yeah, it's over 75, 25, and we're putting in 250,
Yeah, it's
the town's.
I think the paving comes in at 1.2, and then there's some geotechnical stuff that I'm not, they had to do some underground geotechnical stuff, so I'm not sure what the total budget of it is.
And the town's putting in.
Yeah.
The same. Yeah.
So we should be up to $500,000.
Yeah, so it's gotta be.
So
The paving project.
but it'd be 2 million because 75% or 25% of 2 million is 500,000. So that's right.
I presented it to council back in the day, and I'll be honest, I just know the paving portion of it, they figure is about 1.2 is what they're hoping to get.
The entire project was a shade over 2 million.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask him a question, is there any ask, whether town's putting in equal money into?
But it's one more community thing for health and safety and.
And just if I can, and when I went to the Reeves and Mayor's meeting, I made contact. There's a group of municipalities out there that are actually starting a small group of airports to see if we can work with the province to bolster not only tourism, but also tourism and business through your airport. So I've now connected with those guys, Angela Albers from Mountain View County. And so, yeah, so we're hopefully in the process of getting in on that. Maybe there's some grant money too to bolster that, so through some economic development.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to move into the next department, which is our utilities, so water and our sewer. They maintained a status quo from year to year, so there wasn't a significant increase at all. But utilities makes up 7% of the overall budget for 2024. The big thing with utilities is to continue operating and delivering exceptional service to the customers and consumers along all the water lines, maintaining and upgrading any of the infrastructure that's required, and ensuring sustainability of our water and wastewater systems. There's a lot of projects and a lot of preventative maintenance that will be taking place. And some of their key projects include upgrades to the PLC systems in Buffalo Sands and Indiang, expansion of regional water lines, water main replacements in Indiang, repair, replacement, and flush hydrants in rural areas in installation at Buffalo View Estates and Buffalo Sands, completion of the meter station piping replacement, installation of a new distribution mag meter for Buffalo Sands, replacement of 2 CL17s chlorine analyzers, replacement of a pickup truck, a fence line at the Bymore Lagoon will be relocated, pump and rail systems in sewage holding tanks at Buffalo Sands and Buffalo View Estates will be installed, and the Red Willow Drainage Ditch project will take place. And that's going to be a reserve, working with reserves that we've set aside money for. And then if I roll right into the capital purchases, and I think I've covered most of them. I'm just going to make sure. One additional item is that utilities has identified is setting up a reserve for future repairs and maintenance. So they're earmarked 100,000 to go into future reserves. So that way they've got money in the event that there's a major situation, break that needs to be repaired, that they have funds set aside. And I think I've hit everything else on there. Is there any questions on water and sewer?
I guess it'd be for the installation of water lines. I'm just kind of wondering like what we have really set aside for.
Well, we're taking all of the building community, like, it's a new one,
Community Building Fund.
federal gas tax. So we take the money and we put it, we keep it in utilities so that we can use it for rural water lines. We've seen this grant double 3 times in the past. Anytime our prime minister seems to be under a little bit of political pressure, he tends to increase it, double it. So we could come in here with the revised budget to set the tax rate, and instead of $400,000, we could have $800,000 to work with. That would almost get us phase 2. And I'm hoping that more grant money is made available through the provincial government, especially with the drought that seems to be taking place, unless it starts raining in March and doesn't quit, which would help us get to our farms and people out in that area that are just screaming for it. Like they're desperate. I mean, they're moving the intake pipes from one dugout to another. I mean, we're hoping that we keep lobbying, which you guys do a great job of, and keep lobbying, and some money may come our way.
I was just kind of wondering on stage 2 that we're going to be talking, say like about Gadsby. There was talk, say like with extending it up to Westwoods.
At one time, we were looking at taking it up to Westwoods, but it was never on there. Should we be looking at that as an additional one on there? And should we be looking at going out for tender? I'm just kind of wondering where we're really sitting.
We haven't done anything. We're still using the numbers that we had from the old tenders. But I mean, we could go back out to tenders, see what the cost is. By the time we get to setting the budget for the tax rate, perhaps we have found some more grant money, or maybe the tenders are better. I mean, Joe can put the tender together and get it out, see what the prices are. Sorry.
I think that is a legitimate discussion, but maybe not at this budget. We just don't, right now, we don't have the money, but I think there's some ideas that have been floated around of going forward with that. But I think if we're talking about going to tender, it's not at the budget time to do that.
Totally different times.
Yeah. Very valid point to bring up, but I think it's to be, we could do it at committee of the whole or something and have a solid conversation on it.
Thanks, James.
Is there other questions on utilities?
Red Willow Lagoon. I know that the drainage is included in this budget to get that fixed. Did we include any for metering? Where are we landing budget-wise on that? Is it in, out?
Well, we're still working on a plan to try and get this thing back up and running. So I know Joe has some meetings. I think he's been waiting for the availability of the REEF to be able to go out and talk to a couple of our ratepayers about perhaps they would take some of the effluent. If not, then we would have to probably tender or look at what we could do to pipe. We need to pipe past that wetland and then probably pipe down that ditch. But to actually meter the effluent, I don't know if we've gotten that far yet. We just want to get the lagoon back up and running.
So that's not currently in.
You're talking metering in, right?
Yes. Correct.
And you're going to do that at Erskine and Red Willow, I think you had talked about.
Well, it is, we've had a few discussions. It's went back and forth. I just wasn't sure if it was in.
Or we did talk at one point about a service fee that then you would charge our offset that, the cost of it, and then everybody would charge that, so that we're using it. Go ahead.
I'm noticing there's not a huge labor increase here. We had talked at one time about staffing in that department, that as we get more and more regulations, there is no extra staff in this budget.
Well, we hired an extra staff member last year. And so we have two, I think they both completed their phase level 1 certification. And we will continue to support them to get their level 2 and their level 3. I think that Joe and I are probably going to sit down and look at what we're paying our staff, because they are, I mean, we use them a lot. They do get a lot of overtime. And I think, on the other side of that, we also want to look at what we're charging them out at. As we've seen, the demand for this service continues to go up in the county. Veteran has no operators right now. We're filling in for them. Of course, we're assisting Big Valley. We assisted Denelda quite a bit last year. So I think we need to take a hard look at what we're charging out. What kind of opened my eyes is, I had a guy come out to repair a tractor over Christmas and New Year's, and the rate for the truck blew me away. So I think those are the kind of things that we need to really take a hard look at, see if we could, because I'd like to offset it by fees.
So, and I know overtime doesn't constitute another person, but I would really like to look at the amount of overtime that we're putting in, because it seems that when we get it through monthly in our budget, there's lots of it. So I'm just wondering if it constitutes another individual. I think we need to have a hard look at it, and I know we had discussed it during our budget workshops, and I'm just hoping we're not forgetting it. I think Mr. Clark and I both talked about that we need to maybe do a little more there.
Councillor Stevens and Councillor Grover.
On the topic of the different levels of certification, when we're charging out, is it different charge out depending on levels of certification? Because this is pretty standardized in private industry. And
I think so, but I'm not 100%. We're not.
a level 3 is obviously going to be making more. Our cost is going up. Is that passed along? I guess it's
Everybody's charged at a level 3. That seems how I get billed.
Well, we also have done some streamlining too, like Joe mows all the lagoons and stuff now. So we don't have water operators out trying to mow ditches and mow lagoons, because they get on these lawnmowers once a year, where our mowing staff knows what they can do, how they can do it, and they do a much better job. So we have lessened our demand a little bit on our operators, but it quickly gets filled in by something else.
Yeah, no, mine is like a veteran. Don't have a person, make sure we get paid from when we leave here. All the time we're out there, we job ourselves out to Shirley McClellan, make sure that we're getting a fair shake there. Our own stuff, we have to look after it anyhow, but I think anytime that you go and work for another municipality, you should get paid for it, or well paid for it. And as long as we're getting that, I'm good with it.
Yeah, no, we're getting paid. I think we do. Joe and I will sit down the next coming months, and we're gonna, probably drag Krista into it and break it down and take another look at it.
Another truck, another person, if it gets to be that, then, I think we should,
And I don't want to burn out my staff either. So.
that's all I care.
Yeah, on the overtime, the work we do for Shirley and some of the villages and stuff, that probably could be what pushes us overtime. So hopefully they are picking up the overtime.
Right. We make them pay if they drive, if dealing with their problems puts us in an overtime position. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Councillor Gender.
Just looking at previous numbers, say like of 2020, like we were at 280. So like we have not increased their salaries or wages all that much in the last, say, 3 years.
We've kept with market, and we have adjusted for, education, and we have adjusted for abilities. But, it's probably time that we sat down and looked at it again.
I have a comment on that too, as far as with Shirley McClellan. We need to keep that, is the proper staffing out there, right? Because with the extension to Bald Roslin reservoir, hopefully a big reservoir in Denelda. And then if we extend out to completely to the Saskatchewan border, I do believe we're going to have to be budgeting in here for another staff member. But on the same sense, that, you know, most of that should be covered.
To Shirley McCall.
Yeah, just through Shirley McCollum, but we got to make sure we're charging for vacations and everything because that's how the real world operates.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there any further questions on utilities?
I will say that sorry, Chris, I will say the easiest job in the world used to be looking after lagoons. It's not anymore.
But the lagoon thing, you know, the other ones, they charge so much to dump them, like, Bashaw and that. Maybe our ones that are in that business will have to, they're already going up there and dumping. So, and paying, why would they not just pay here too?
Yeah. You know, if our partners want to use the lagoons and want to pay a service fee, because the days of just using our lagoons are over because of the cost. But if we can sit down and negotiate a fair and reasonable fee, then I think I would recommend to council that you put the metering stations in, and we could even take it out of reserves and then replenish them.
Unless it was a yearly fee and then you don't have a metering system that you have to deal with, maintain,
Right.
update and calibrate and all those other pieces too.
But if we don't get that in place, then I'd like to keep the lagoon operating at minimum costs as long as we could, because they're all in good shape. And Joe does a great job when he goes to, discharge them and make sure everything's mowed and in orders, and so that we can do it effectively and don't have any problems that we've had in the past. We're eliminating all that. So.
Councilor Grover?
But Red Willow, if you put it into a pipe and move it to where it has to go, you know, that's a cost. You should try to recoup that cost.
I agree.
And then it would cut down a lot of problems. And if you're waiting on somebody to put it on their land, and they maybe can do that anyhow, but then we have our own way to get rid of the effluent out of that lagoon.
Well, we do have a couple of ideas that we're going to pursue, and one of it is using some pipe and the ditch in our road allowance, which we can use, or if we can find somebody who wants it and we can enter into a long-term contract, that may be a great deal for us also.
How does a metering station work on weather like this?
Does anything work in weather like this? Actually, sewer gas pretty well keeps everything open, but we don't have a lot of froze up sewers, but
But this is above ground, pumping it.
yeah, that might be a problem, but I guess we would close the lagoons down maybe. I don't know.
It might be a mass flow meter though too, which measures stuff going past it, not a turbine or something too. I don't know for sure what their metering package. Joe, do you know what they utilize?
There's a lot of different options as well, including macerators and grinding pumps and heaters. And there's a lot of different options that kind of get looked at. I suppose it depends on what we're doing and when we're going to start doing discharge, or what we're doing and when we would accept different levels of effluent. So there could be a bypass on it, or there could be a macerator on it as well. The different times of year has different functions for it. So we're talking to Stantec just now about some of the options and costs. And that's one of the things that we'll look at is, can it be used all year round? Do we need to bypass it certain times of year and we're just doing flow rates rather than effluent rates and toxicity levels? So we would look at all those options before we actually went to establish it.
It would also be that, then, okay, if they,
Hold on, Mr. Gender, just again, I think we're getting into the weeds when this should be budget numbers. I apologize, I don't want to discount what you're saying. It's important, but it's when we should be bringing that up. And I don't mean to,
Operational thing.
yeah.
So I'm going to roll into garbage collection and disposal. This includes, it is an increase of 13% from last year to this year. Most of it's to do with a significant increase to requisition. Overall, garbage is only 3% of the overall 2024 budget. But one of the things we will be working on with Stettler Waste is we have identified some cost savings, and we are going to be working to change that requisition and coming through with a revised budget. So we're hoping that After next week, we can set up a date for Stettler Waste to have their next meeting and then make changes to the budget as needed.
So is recycling in this?
Correct. It is.
Okay, so there should be, with the new program coming out, maybe some savings come forward. Is that too as well?
Yeah, absolutely, James, but I hate to budget for something that I haven't seen.
No, I get it, but I'm,
As well on that, specifically, those changes will not impact us until 2025. So we won't see it in 24. We've applied and been registered. And so there's a bunch of work to do through 2024. And then it'll be the government's fiscal year, so April 1st, 2025, that will actually see that program kick in.
okay, no, I wondered, I just wanted to make, they were talking that we,
Andrew did a great job before Christmas, got everything filed in on time, and after Christmas, they were still full. But he already had it done, and we're hoping that it works. But I like surprises that go in our favor, not the ones that cost us money. So.
good, thank you.
Any other questions on garbage?
Just one comment on it. When did we purchase that other land for the transfer site through the Stettler Waste Management?
In 2023.
2023, so there's another quarter section. So once again, almost like our gravel pits, we're covered for garbage disposal for future generations. So
Yeah, I don't think I'll be alive to even see him.
plus we can go up further.
Yeah.
We haven't even opened the second cell on the.
And we're getting the revenue we're getting off it because, of course, it's agricultural, and there was an existing lease, and that was part of the deal when we purchased it from the landowner, was that we kept the lease in place and hooked it up to, so I think it's in place now, the same as ours, for another 4 years, but the rent is significant on it, much more than what we've seen in the past. So that's going towards paying off the purchase of it also.
Next, I'll roll into Family and Community Support Services, FCSS. It is status quo. There's not significant changes. However, there was a funding announcement that was changed in 2024. So we've had to reflect those changes, but it is a nominal change of $8,000. So very insignificant in the big picture, but I just wanted to flag it nonetheless. The next department that I'm going to roll into is also just really quick. It's cemeteries. We continue to fund cemeteries when they submit their application to the County of Stettler and show their profit and loss statement to us. And from there, we do funding. Any funding that isn't used is done as a reserve transfer that was recommended as a reserve transfer by past councils, and we make sure that it takes place on an annual basis.
So cemeteries, is that one of those things that comes under other in your?
Correct. Yeah. Next, we roll into agricultural services. Agricultural services is an increase from 23 to 24 of 6.2%. Most of that is explained by the capital increases that we've done. And overall, agricultural services is 6% of the annual budget for 24. The focus is on comprehensive strategy to enhance our environmental management and infrastructure. Our primary goal is to conduct the roadside spraying in the southern third of the county for 2024. Continued removal of large brush, building upon the control measures implemented 2 years ago, as well as completion of the pathway at the lake is also on the agenda for 2024. Some of the key priorities includes weed control, targeting absentee wormwood. I know that.
I shouldn't even bother.
As well as common buckthorn. I got that one right. They will also be doing reclamation of gravel pits, and it was quite an accomplishment to get one in 2023. So that was a huge achievement in 23. Some of the capital purchases, they will be finalizing the purchase of the roadside spray truck, replacement of the side-by-side, and implementing a spray system also with it. Agricultural services does transfers on an annual basis as well for capital. So we will be looking at pulling stuff out of capital to cover those costs. Is there questions on ag services?
I just have one question. when we talk about the pathway up at Buffalo Lake, does that come out of Ag Services budget?
Just the vegetation, like we're going to plant Saskatoon trees and grass, things like that, and the weed spray.
Yeah, because of the drought and lack of moisture last year, they chose to not get all those trees in, and so they'll be hoping to get them all in 24.
So that's a reserve transfer from that money that was sitting there?
No, we don't use the reserve for that. That's just, we just basically take it out of inventory.
There was some amounts that we had flagged that was a project that we carried it forward. And so we do have a little bit of money from that with a project that was getting carried forward from 22 to 23 and into 24.
But when we show it as pathway system, it doesn't just say vegetation stuff.
Yeah, it's
It needs to be more like a parks thing than Ag Services.
yeah, the Ag Services does all our weed control and they plant all our grass and stuff.
The pathway is complete.
Yeah. Just the stairs, I think it was in operations that they talked about stairs at Buffalo Views, that will be coming out of the reserve once it's built and installed.
Yeah, I'd like to see like some of the beautification thing if you're going to, like putting the trees in. Now, why would we take it out of that reserve where we sold the land and then we're going to give us money back to them to put in some stuff there? I think that would make sense.
Yeah, that's council's direction. I mean, we buy a lot of trees. We get a lot of,
I just need the ones that are going there.
yeah. I mean, that's council direction. If council wanted us to do that, that's what we do. But right now, we have it in the Ag Service budget.
Got to be some budget, so it's there now. We can figure that out later.
Okay, thank you.
Is there other questions on Ag Services? We'll roll into planning and development next. This is an overall decrease from 23 to 24, but planning and development makes up 3% of the 2024 budget. The reason there's been some of the decreases was some of the projects that were planned in 2023, completion of them, as well as some cost adjustments and getting them to the correct departments that we reflected in 2024. So plans include primary function will continue to be the efficient and timely process of development permits, subdivision, and land use bylaw amendment applications when they arise. And some of the major projects that will be taking place in planning and development is the review of the Municipal Development Plan, MDP, as well as the land use bylaw, the LUB. These are crucial for guiding future growth and development. They're also currently engaged in intermunicipal development planning with the town of Stettler. And another significant project is the development of road plans for the South Shore Growth Node, which is vital for sustainable growth and development and expanding areas. Some of the things that they're also working is closely monitoring the alternative energy plants, including solar and wind, which have significant implications for local and regional planning. And keeping abreast of changing regulations concerning sand and gravel pits, ensuring our practices align with the latest standards. And planning for public access at Buffalo Lake is also a key area of interest for planning and development in 24. Is there any questions about planning and development budget? I'll roll next into recreation. Recreation is also another budget that's a status quo. And when we, from 2023 to 2024, and when we look at the overall budget, recreation and culture, and I'll mix these interchangeably with it, accounts for 3% of the overall budget for 2024. The goal of recreation and the insurance as well is to support recreation through programs, facilities, and organizations, fostering deep community bonds and ensuring our small communities remain viable. They will be reviewing and updating policies surrounding recreation funding. as well as establishing a policy and dissolving nonprofits for need for policy, as this matter was identified in 23. Some of the key projects that will be taking place is the Hartshorn Sign Project. It's a historical information that's down in the Bymore Indiang area. They'll be continuing to do playground inspections. And another key priority is the insurance side and making sure that our insurance is up to date, accurate, and we're following the guidelines that we need to be following for the insurance claims that we do handle. Is there questions on recreation?
Krista, that transfers to other government under expenses, that includes, would that include the rec,
Stellar.
the town of Stettler also?
Just,
To touch base on that, through 2023, we did review the rec agreement, and we've extended it for another
10 years.
10 years with agreement from the town of Stettler also. So it does work very well for all our residents and to make a community with a lot of the facilities in town. So thank you.
And then just to add, the cultural expenses that we cover in there include our museum and library grants that we do cover off with there.
You slide it up a little bit. Other way.
Now they're up.
Does anybody have any further questions on recreation or culture?
So Krista, we are projecting to meet the ask requirement of the Town and Country Museum for $32,000 this year.
Yes, that is.
Been included in the budget, so we do have 32,000 in the budget for the museum. Is there any further questions on? So that takes us to showing a grand total of a 8,000, oh my, $6,733 deficit.
She looks after our numbers.
It's all good.
It's cold
then
out.
We have to take it into the cash flow. So then once we take everything into the cash flow, we have amortization expenses that we have to add back in. We are
Funding, 4 of the grade. I guess my mic.
died. Oh, there we go. We are funding 4 of the graders, and so we reflect that as well as the payments that we have to make that isn't part of the expense. Yeah, just keep rolling with me. I'll cover most of this pretty quick. Then we roll into gravel adjustments for gravel that we're going to be laying, as well as crushing. And then into our reserve transfers for any of the planned reserve transfers that we've done throughout 2024. Once we get to the bottom line, we do show we're back to where I started, and I said we had a surplus of $7,307, and that is where we have the budget for 2024 set. You do notice 25 to 27 are not balanced, but the primary purpose of having those years in there is it's a requirement of the MGA. And further to it is it allows council to plan for future costs. So that way, when I come to you with a future grader, for instance, like we have in 2025 for the county of Stettler, you guys are aware that those costs are upcoming. So it's about planning and looking forward to the future. We do also have the 6-year capital budget there with plans. And these constantly are changing the 6-year capital plan, because if something gets cut, we are adjusting and moving from there. But this is the 2024 to 2027 budget. We'll be looking for council to approve the 2024 budget at the February meeting on February 14th. And that is my budget presentation. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Krista. Councillor Stevens?
Not a question, more of a statement. Occasionally I hear the criticism about relationships with partners, whether it's next level of government up, regional partners. But it's kind of interesting when you go through line by line on the budget and you look at the topics: fire, regional agreement; emergency management, regional agreement; Airport, regional agreement. Water and sanitary, we both have agreements with multiple partners. Garbage, recycling, FCSS, recreational, library, museum, planning and development, and protective services. Every single one of our items on here, we have at minimum one agreement, if not multiple. So I don't, yes, sometimes negotiations happen, sometimes there's differences of opinion, but the numbers kind of speak to them for themselves. Every one of these breakouts has a regional agreement, so I don't put quite as much stock in that as what I've heard.
And when we're doing it, we talk about one community. That just proves that we're one community. We're working together. We're all under one house. We're all working together to make this community work. So I agree with you, Justin. It's, yeah, when you look at it, whether we like it or not, we're tied. So, yeah. Yep.
Any other questions? Well, I'd like to thank Yvette, Krista, Nikki for starting in with our strategic plan and working through those pieces and all the budgeting we go through with all department heads, all of individuals within departments that put this effort in. We've looked for public input a day like today. We apologize the weather's like this, but we certainly couldn't forecast that. But there's many opportunities for public input right from when we're doing our strategic plans throughout the years, but we ask for it. And as we're talking about the criticism after, I know we will always be criticized on our budget, but we are asking for that input up front, and so that we can work towards it. We may not agree with the input as a council. There's takes 4 out of 7 votes to agree on things, but I do appreciate all the effort that's put in, and another good job on budgeting.
And I think it's prudent to note that this wasn't just thrown together today. It was multiple hours by staff and even council. We sat for almost 3 days, 4 days of dealing with going through item by item, frustrating the heck out of administration because we want more or want less. And I just want to say thank you. You've done a great job.
Thank you very much, and staff does do a great job. Nikki keeps us on the straight and narrow with our comments. Andrew's got a spreadsheet for everything and puts together our budget, and Krista does all the heavy lifting, and she does a great job at it. Department heads have great input. We start in July of every year. I almost cry when we pass the budget to set the tax rate, because I know the next week I'm going to get an email from Krista asking for 2025.
I only sent it out in June this year.
Yeah, it's a big, but it's the biggest part of your mandate, and it runs the county. So.
Absolutely.
And on a very bright note, if you look at the last page of our package, it might be 32 below, but it shows the crocuses that should be coming in spring. So there is that hope all the time. So
Always hope.
always hope.
Absolutely.
We had a tough life last spring, Larry. There wasn't many of them.
Not be here, they probably got 8.
That was Brenda Myers that found that, and she must have found it in the Big Valley area. So thank you, Brenda.
Yes. And thanks everybody for today. So we're adjourned then, eh?
You want a motion?